My name is Jeanette Maister, and today I'm going to reveal the must-know student recruiting trends. Next on the RecTech podcast.
Welcome to RecTech, the podcast where recruiting and technology intersect. Each month, you'll hear from vendors shaping the recruiting world, along with recruiters who'll tell you how they use technology to hire talent. Now, here's your host, the mad scientist of online recruiting, Chris Russell.
All right, it's time once again for RecTech, the only podcast that helps employers and recruiters connect with more candidates through technology-inspired conversations. Today's show is a vendor edition. This episode of RecTech is sponsored by our friends at Lever, providing a modern take on the applicant tracking system. Lever combines ATS and CRM functionality in a single powerful platform to help you source, nurture, and manage your candidates all in one place. They offer a branded job site, custom sourcing tools, great metrics, email and calendar integration, along with a host of other benefits that your recruiting team will love to use. Best of all, Lever's simple interface means that hiring managers and applicants will also love it. To find out how Lever can help you both accelerate and humanize hiring, visit lever.co/RecTech. That's lever.co/RecTech. Lever is where ATS meets CRM. All right, just a couple of show notes for the listeners. Quick thank you to Dino Cruz, Director of Recruitment for Optimism Global. He connected with me on LinkedIn this week and thanked me for doing the show. So I appreciate the feedback, Dino, and thanks for listening. Also, this show is now syndicated on the HR Podcasters Network, one of my new endeavors. If you head over to hrpodcasters.com, you can find this show and discover over 20 more just like it that focus on HR and recruiting topics. So check out HR Podcasters. And I'm looking for more guests, too. So if you're willing to come on and talk about your recruiting technology, email me at chris@rectechmedia.com. All right, let's get to our guest. Jeanette Maister is Managing Director, Americas at New York-based WCN, whose talent acquisition suite helps to improve the hiring process. Jeanette lives and breathes campus recruiting, having spent most of her career as a practitioner. She began her journey in campus recruitment at Lehman Brothers in regional and later global leadership campus roles, where she first used WCN. She went on to work for IBM, Gartner, and finally as Global Chief Operating Officer of Campus Recruiting at Credit Suisse. Since joining WCN, Jeanette relishes driving growth, influencing the product, and ultimately helping clients transform their recruiting efforts. Jeanette, welcome to RecTech. It's great to have you.
Great, thank you. So happy to be here.
Definitely. When did you work at Gartner, by the way? I used to work there.
Oh, my goodness. That was right after Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. So I guess that was in 2009, now that I think of it. Lehman went under in 2008.
Oh, wow.
Did we overlap?
No, well before my time. I was late 90s. I worked in tech support, and I also worked on Gartner.com, publishing all those briefs from the analysts and stuff. But that was back in the day, yep. How long were you at Gartner?
I was there a very short period of time. It was actually less than a year when I got a phone call from my former boss at Lehman after we went under. She was, at the time, was the global head of campus at Credit Suisse. She said, "Do you want to be my COO?" And it was one of those dream jobs, my global COO, that I had always wanted to do. And I was like, yes, sign me up. So quickly, walked into that dream job, which just was amazing. So it was very short.
Very cool.
Short but fantastic.
All right, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to the topic today. I think it's interesting. I've also been a recruiter myself. I remember at my last job, we were recruiting hospitality graduates. So we actually did a big push onto college campuses across the country that had hospitality schools. So I traveled to places like UNLV, Virginia Tech, and I enjoyed it. I mean, I liked hanging out with students and trying to recruit them. So let's get into this. I want to start by just kind of reading something off the report intro, because we're going to talk about a report today that you guys did along with Universum. So let me just read this here. It says, students are more empowered than ever before to choose where they start their professional careers. Recruiters, in turn, are aware of this mounting competition, which is ramping up business pressures to recruit faster and be more agile. Having more year-round campus presence and accelerated processes is becoming the norm. In the must-know student recruiting trends for 2018, WCN partnered with employer branding thought leader Universum to investigate this trend further and see how recruiting insights can be improved upon by looking to engage and influence the best hires before competitors by devoting more time on focused value-added activities. So with that kind of start out by just your initial thoughts on this trend and where are things headed?
Sure. Well, I think, the acceleration to me, having been in campus recruiting for, I hate to say it and date myself, 18 years, it's, it's dating myself, but the acceleration is just an unbelievable trend. And I see that now where, offers are going out way in advance, than has been in the past. I was just hosting a customer roundtable last week, and the joke was around the table was, we're going to have to start talking to, campus recruits when they're literally in preschool. And there was a lot of, and everyone was joking, but it was accelerated first to junior year, then sophomore year. Now we have to talk to freshmen. Now people are going to high schools. And so, the competition is just incredibly intense. And that was, one of the things that we really wanted to understand what was going on now versus just a few years ago.
So what are the origins of the report and what kind of data is it based on?
Sure. Well, it was interesting. The origin of the report is, for me, and at WCN, we have such a strong heritage in campus recruiting. For me as a former customer, used WCN to run my business at Lehman before they went under, did it again at Credit Suisse, and, always have been focusing on, campus recruiting. And I had always used Universum myself and their data, who again helped run the business when I was in campus recruiting as a practitioner. So we thought it would be really fun to combine forces, and because we look at like two sides of the coin, and we have data on two sides of the coin. So when I think of like WCN, because we're an applicant tracking system and we deal with event registrations and CRM, we have all sorts of applicant data. Universum on the flip side has great data on students. And so we thought if we, could pull our, data together, we could really do something special. Yeah. So that was sort of the origin of it. And then, when we looked at the data, what we actually looked at was on the WCN side, almost 1 million student applications across the globe, which was comprised of over 200 countries, and it was for students who were applying to jobs across a whole variety of industries. So we looked at finance jobs, retail, technology, consulting, nonprofit. So really ran the gamut. On the flip side, Universum, they looked at over 1.5 million respondents globally, students, and that equated to 60 countries. And then from their standpoint, they were looking at different majors. So business majors, IT majors, engineering, humanities, liberal arts. So when we put all the data together, we have this really robust data set that we could then, dig in and analyze, pivot table up, and get all sorts of interesting statistics on to pull out some of these trends.
You talk about the competitiveness of today's campus recruiting. What in your eyes makes up a good campus recruiting program, kind of from top to bottom? Can you kind of give us a high level what that looks like? Yeah,
well, I think first maybe I'll go to the first part, how competitive it is, and just one thing I hadn't mentioned earlier is I'm a big data geek and I love stats. So maybe I'll just give you a few stats first on how competitive campus recruiting is, and then we can talk about the good campus program, what makes it up. So, what we found when we looked at, almost the, the million applications is that recruiters are really busy, and it's really competitive. So we found 87% of those, million applications, recruiters are just screening out. They're not even, interviewing those candidates. Only 10% of those who apply are getting interviewed. Only 2.5% of all those applicants actually receive offers. And in terms of those candidates who are getting hired, 1.87% actually accept their offer and start. So if you think about that, I mean, that's just, a funnel that starts out so huge and gets narrowed down.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing as well is that when we looked at the data with the applications is that there's a lot of candidates withdrawing from the process because it's so competitive. So we found that 3% of candidates would withdraw at the screening stage, but as we've continued down the funnel, that percentage of candidates withdrawing from the process increased. So at the interview stage, 14% of candidates were withdrawing from that stage, and once they received offers, 23% were declining. So again, I thought there was something very interesting because the further down the process someone goes, the the higher withdrawal rate was. So we think there's a huge opportunity there for employers to really personalize and engage with the candidates even more so because it's so competitive.
Are they withdrawing because of the process they don't like, or is it more they're getting other offers or something?
Well, it's interesting. What we found that the average number of employers that a student is looking at in 2017 was 25. But if you look back in 2008, it was only 12. So, huge difference. Students have many more options, and they're considering many more options than they have been in the past. So I think that's a big part of that with withdrawal rate. There's more options. So, and I guess, thinking about your second part of the question is, what makes up a really good campus recruiting program? I think, what we found in the data, and this is more in the University data, because that's like, well, what do students want? Is that the students really want, their number one thing they said was a friendly work environment. That was the number one thing. So that's what the students care about today. If you, provide them with, you think about it, we all spend so much time at work. You want to have an environment where it's like friendly and fun and nice. And so that is a big thing with the students this day. The other interesting thing is the other priority is that came up number 2. What they care about with the program is professional training and development. So if you combine that together, is friendly, professional, trained develop. They want they want to learn, they want to develop, and I think the interesting thing is the last attribute. The thing that the students cared about the least was the message that came out from employers that say they're recruiting only the best talent. So the idea of being elitist and competitive, that is a big turnoff.
Really?
So that was the last attribute. University had like a whole rating list of a number of attributes. That was the last one. So students are not interested in saying, I only work for the best. You only want to hire the best. You hear these stories from years ago, and I worked in Wall Street where it's like, look to the left, look to the right. Only one of you is going to be here at the end of your internship. Like that's a big turnoff.
That's
to students.
That's interesting. What would you say to employers to change that message to? What should they be saying instead?
I mean, just if we think about, what the students really cared about in what we found was friendly work environment, professional development. It's like, people want to work together. Like, let's make this friendly. Let's all work for, a larger cause. And so think about, you want to make sure that
more team related words, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Versus being like, everyone's pitted up against each other. That's not going to fly these days.
Yeah. I'm looking at I think it's page 5 of the report, where you have this funnel of application, desire, consideration, and awareness. And along with each of those is kind of, it looks like the structure of a campus recruiting program. Could you walk us through that a bit? I think that was interesting. That I wanted to point out to the audience. Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah. I do have it in front of me. So, I mean, I think what's interesting is when we think about, the funnel, it's similar to an application funnel. Like, what happens? You're a student. You first have to become aware of the job opportunity of the campus program, and so awareness is all about, how can students find out about your company. And so here we have listed out, and I'm going to read it out because not everyone has the report in front of them. Way to awareness is outdoor billboard advertising, employer advertisement on radio or TV. We think like specific with campus recruiting. Some people, will go old school and put it in the, student newspaper or flyers or billboard. Like it's just, how do you just have a general awareness of that employer?
Right.
And that's the first thing. And once the student is aware of you as an employer, well, the next step is like, well, you got to get them to actually consider you. So that's where we actually find career fairs are great for getting students to consider you. So we have career fairs, website, career guidance websites, brochures presenting possibilities. So once first you want to make awareness, make sure they're aware, then get them to consider you. And then once they're considering you, well, then you want them, the next part of the funnel is desire you, like get them to want you. And you can do that with an employer presentations on campus, informational interviews, employer websites. Like, again, really getting that candidate excited about your organization and say, hey, I actually really desire to work at your organization. And then the last part of that funnel is applications, because in the end, you got to get them to actually apply. So once they get through all of that, and that's, a lot of organizations will do, employer office and site visits, and even more presentations on campus, informational interviews. As I said before, some of these you can be used at both stages of the funnel. But it goes from, it's similar to, like, recruiting is marketing, and we hear that all the time. Awareness, consideration, desire, application. You gotta, you're not going to apply somewhere if you're not even aware of the opportunity.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases too, I think you have to. It also means you have to build kind of relationships with the schools themselves, right? Talk about that a bit if you could, in terms of just getting to know some of the department heads and things like that, because they can be very helpful in terms of promoting your jobs to their students as well, right?
Absolutely. And that, that was something in my, past lives, and a number of our customers now, they'll make great connections with professors, and they can recommend top candidates to them. They can also, in class, mention the great opportunities. I think the other piece as well is having a great student ambassadors, so former interns who have worked for your organization, making sure they're armed with great information. They go back onto campus, they can talk up the company they just worked for. Obviously you have to assume they have a great experience and whatnot. But I think that's a way to really leverage and get great referrals from and really just get the awareness out there.
Yeah. Speaking of the awareness, I was just thinking about some of the online sites that target students today, like Way Up, Portfolium. I don't know if there's like a Piazza, I think. Have you heard of these, and you hear employers talking about them as well?
Absolutely. We're actually partnered with Way Up.
Okay.
So they're fantastic. And that's, a number of our customers are, using Way Up, and, some other organizations as well from a sourcing standpoint, because I think what's interesting is, you pick, employers will pick certain schools that they go to, but they can't be everywhere. And there's so many fantastic candidates outside those core target schools. And if you can, get and increase your reach, if you can't be at every school, because who has all the, the budget and resources to fly everyone everywhere, Way Up and other organizations are a great way to really expand your reach and promote your brand and find great candidates from a sourcing standpoint.
Diversity is in the news a lot lately. What trends are you seeing there as far as diversity campus recruiting?
Yeah, so it was really interesting. So we looked at diversity. We cut it down into two areas. First looked at gender, and then we looked at ethnicity. And what we found when we crunched the numbers on all the applications is that women actually, in our data set of just under 1 million, were applying at a lower rate than the guys were.
Oh, yeah.
But what was interesting is as they started going through the funnel from applications and to interview and offer and accept, they actually had a higher pass-through rate than the men did. So we have 34% of the applications were from women. But the actually accept rate or the offer rate was actually 40% of those that received offers were from women, and 41% were who actually accepted their offer and joined the class were from women. So to me, that was actually a really good news because to me it says, organizations that maybe they're not attracting as many women as they should be to actually apply. So that was an area that you have to, organizations clearly, if those are your benchmark numbers, you've got to get more women applying to roles. Mm-hmm. But once they had the women in their pipeline, they were really making sure they get through. However, it was helping like extra mentoring or coaching or whatnot, but it was, and clearly, a lot of these are our customers, and no one's lowering the bar, but making sure that they're getting through and there's no unintended bias. So that to me was a really good news piece. In terms of the actual overall accept rate with men versus women, it's pretty much the same. Women accepted their offers at 75% accept rate, men with 74%. So pretty similar accept rate there. What was interesting with female students is for them, in terms of getting them to apply and trying to increase that application rate, is they really want to know what's expected of them. So when Universum looked at their data, 49% of women, the top priority for them was making sure that there was a clear path for advancement. Really important to female applicants. And the other thing that they found was respect for people and the purpose is really important for U.S. Female students as well. And there were certain industries that females were more interested and preferred than others, and it was found to be arts and entertainment, healthcare services, media and advertising, NGOs, and educational and scientific institutions. So I think what's interesting here is for those employers that aren't in those preferred industries, to work really hard to ensure that women know that they're wanted, and making sure there's a really clear career path laid out to encourage them to apply.
Yep.
So when we look at ethnicity, it's a little bit of a different story. So we broke it down and we looked at Black, Hispanic, and Asian. And Black and Hispanic had a similar type of trajectory that the women did, where smaller percentage of applications, they were comprised of smaller applications, but the pass-through rate was at a higher percentage. Now, with that said, Black and Hispanic was nowhere near the 34% of applications. So Blacks made up only 2.47% of applications, and Hispanic was only 3.67%, which is really tiny.
Yeah.
I mean, so low. So it's interesting. When I was looking at this data, I did another talk recently in a PowerPoint slide, and I was doing it late at night. I have a 9-year-old son, and I shared the story because I think it's sort of sweet. And he was like, "Mom, what are you working on?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm working on data." Like, data, I love data. I thought to myself, great, I'm doing something right. And he was like, "Well, what are you looking at?" So I started to explain to him that, look, well, my son's name was, well, look, only 2.7% of the applications were from people who are Black. And he was like, "Well, that's crazy. That's so low." And I thought to myself, you're right, that is so low.
Even kids
I'm teaching him something right.
Yep.
And so even at 9 years old, he recognizes that there's a problem from that, and we need to fix it. So that's where, again, a lot more work to do. Now, the interesting thing, when we looked at the Asian population, there was actually a reverse pipeline issue where applications from Asians was 18.34%, giving you like straight stats. But the percent of offers was smaller than that, was 16.21. So I think what's interesting here is there may be some unintended bias or something going on where Asians, have a decent, not amazing percentage of applications, but they're not getting passed through on the same rate that they're applying. So some interesting stuff going on there.
All right. Okay. Let me break for a second. Talk about my other sponsor for this episode, which is HireTool. Have you heard of them yet?
Yes, I have.
Awesome. Well, their AI engine is your personal sourcing assistant, so you can submit your sourcing tasks and let them do the sourcing for you, even while you're sleeping or having a cup of coffee. They even let you build Boolean strings on the fly and display that contact info for candidates that you find online. So they got some great reviews on Facebook and Google out there. So check them out at HireTool.com. It's HireTual. And Nintran and his team are doing some pretty cool things over there as far as sourcing goes. So check out HireTool to get a chance, listeners. All right, Jeanette. So if you had one piece of advice for campus recruiters based on this report, what would that be today?
Well, I touched on it a little bit earlier, is that, I think there's incredible candidates out there that are being overlooked. And it's really important to engage with all candidates. And so it's interesting. Some of the data we looked at was around, have we moved beyond the Ivy League? Is Ivy League dead? And, I know in running myself, like campus recruiting programs, we always had our set of course target schools. We would just recruit from those schools. And if you were outside those core schools, well, you were sort of out of luck. You would sometimes go into a black hole, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so what we found, what was interesting when we looked at all the application data, out of those almost 1 million applications, it was from over 2,000 universities. And And the Ivy Leagues comprised of only 18%. Applications from Ivy League students was just 18%. But when we looked at actually the offer rate, Ivy Leagues, out of all the offer rate students from there, were receiving 33% of the offers. And, which means, many, it was a bar. It was much harder to get through the process if you weren't from the Ivy League. Now, interestingly, when candidates who received offers only came from 319 universities. So you think of like that funnel of, applications or over 2,000 universities from a sourcing only down to 300 and change. I mean, it makes sense given the core school structure and how we set up these programs. But I think there's a huge opportunity to really go after fantastic talent that aren't at these target schools.
Yeah.
And what we found was the accept rate for candidates outside of the Ivies, again, we use that as a proxy for target schools, was 77% accept rate versus the Ivy League students accepted offers at a 68% rate. So if you want to look to increase your accept rate, get great candidates who are super eager to be there, I think this is a great tool to look at because they're unfortunately at times overlooked. So I think that's a big piece of advice I would have after looking at all of our report and the data.
Yeah. If you can, give me one or two sort of what I call campus recruiting hacks. Thinking back on your years in the business, I mean, any tips come to mind?
Well, I always have said I think 18 years is you have to personalize the process. And now we hear all about engagement and student engagement and doing that earlier. I mean, to me, I think it's all about delivering the right message to the right students at the right time. So we think about like the recruiting funnel, before the candidates even applied, when they're starting to discover you want to deliver that right message. And so, for us, I have a number of customers where they, a candidate can RSVP to an event. And right then and there on screen, you have, certain information that can pop up. So if our technology can tell if you're, a male or female, we were talking about that before, and deliver a really personalized message that would resonate with the candidate. To me, I think that's really important, is personalizing that message, whether it's through technology, smart technology, or, literally having, people pick up the phone. So you see, it's a fantastic candidate. Let me actually call them or start to engage with them in a personalized way. Because in the end, students, and really all of us as candidates, we want to be made to feel special, right? We want to know that we're not just a cog in the wheel, but we're like a person and, special, and like organizations care about us. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. So the more that recruiters can personalize the process for candidates, the better.
Yeah, I would echo that. I remember I was recruiting at the cruise line. We did a bunch of schools, and I built an email list based off of that, and I made sure we emailed them on at least a monthly basis to just keep them aware of next training classes and keep them in the loop at the very least. So I think a lot of companies should be looking at those types of practices overall.
Absolutely.
All right, just a couple more questions for you, Jeanette. Looking back on your time on campuses across the country, is there a particular student that stands out to you? Do you remember that came to you and really pitched themselves well or anything?
That is a great question. There's two that come to mind now that I think of it. One was actually a referral candidate, and what I think is always fun about campus recruiting versus experienced hire or you could say regular recruiting is referral candidates are like almost a pain point in campus recruiting because everyone knows someone who's in college and business is always referring people and it becomes almost overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Whereas regular recruiting, referred candidates are probably your best source of candidates. So it's always this interesting dichotomy. But I'll bring you back to the day. I think it was my first job as a recruiter. I was doing MBA recruiting at Lehman Brothers, and we had core schools. We never looked at students outside of our target schools. And there was this one candidate who I remember I was in the investment banking division, 10 different bankers, forwarded me this candidate that we needed to look at, which, and again, so this candidate did this amazing job where he wasn't at a core school, but he networked his way in. But he did it not in an annoying way. He was very smart and respectful and explained why he wanted to be an investment banker, why he wasn't at, whatever target schools that we recruited at, enough to get so many advocates across the business to say, we really need to look at this candidate. And the candidate had the chops to back it up, that what we were looking for. Back in the day was a certain GMAT score, a certain grade, whatever it was. And I'll never forget that. And he came in, the summer intern, and just was an amazing rock star. And so I just remember the power of referrals, but this was a great referral, and he did it in such a smart way. So he stands out to me. Nice. Ross Hammerman, if you're actually listening, that was you. And then there was another candidate a few years after that. I think this is during my days when I was at Credit Suisse, and I was running an effort actually to find great candidates outside of our core school. So this is also an area I've always been very passionate about. And I remember interviewing a candidate, and I always ask the question, what's your greatest accomplishment? Now, I'm usually interviewing candidates who are age 20, 21. Right. So you get big differences in answers. And normally I would get an answer around maybe they created a club or something that wasn't great accomplishment, but that you hear it over and over. And I remember this one candidate looking at me, and she said to me, I was the first in my family to go to college, and I'm working my way through to help pay for it at the same time. And I just remember being so blown away. I'd spent the day interviewing, tons of other candidates, asking the same question. And it was such a powerful statement just to, hear her say that, because that was, to me, it was incredible. First in family. What a huge accomplishment. That truly was a real accomplishment.
Yeah,
so I remember.
That's a very down-to-earth answer, and I would also, I probably would have loved that too if I heard it. So, all right, last question, Jeanette. Recruiting is I think it's getting much more technical every year with all this new technology out there and other, barriers in place. What technology trends are you excited about in the coming year or two?
Well, that's a great question. Biggest trend is, the biggest buzzword we keep hearing is artificial intelligence, machine learning, predictive analytics, whatever we want to call it. But we keep hearing driverless cars, and we think about that can certainly pertain to recruiting. So to me, that's the biggest trend that I'm excited about. And I'm also excited about because we're doing a lot of interesting stuff around that at WCN. So we actually rolled out late last year predictive recruiting scoring, which I think is really cool. Again, as a campus recruiter, put myself in the shoes of a recruiter. You come back from lunch, you open up your computer and unlock it, and you can have something that tells you, hey, someone just applied and they have a 98% probability of receiving an offer. I mean, to me, if I had that years ago, that to me is such a game changer, to be able to see information like that you can really then act on that. So I talked earlier about personalizing the process. If I had information like that around a candidate who just applied, well, man, I know what I'm going to do to personalize the process. I'm going to pick a phone. I'm going to find, the top person in my company to reach out to that candidate. I mean, there's so many, I can automate all sorts of things around, candidates who are predicted to be, fantastic for my company. So to me, I think, machine learning, again, artificial intelligence, predictive analytics, there's all that is just going to continue to, push us in an even better direction than we have been in the past. Real game-changing stuff.
Sounds good. Well, Jeanette Maister from WCN, thanks very much for joining me today. Appreciate the conversation. It was great.
Yes, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Tell listeners how to connect with you and WCN online.
Yes, so you can find us. Our website is WCNsolutions.com. And so you can, find us there. I am on Twitter as Jeanette Maister, JeanEttE, Maister, MAI, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, ER. So definitely tweet me. I'm on LinkedIn. So, I'm always around to talk campus recruiting and best practices, and reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. And we'll link to all your pages there in the show notes. Jeanette, thanks very much again. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you.
That will do for this edition of the RecTech Podcast. Thanks again to our sponsors. Remember to check out lever.co/RecTech for your ATS needs, and also HireTool. You can subscribe to this show via iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, and Stitcher Radio. If you enjoy the show, please leave a review on your channel of choice. I'd love to see your feedback or show suggestions, or mention us on social media with the hashtag RecTech. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Another episode of RecTech is in the books. Follow Chris on Twitter at Chris Russell or visit rectechmedia.com, where you can find the audio and links for this show on our blog. RecTech Media helps both HR tech firms and employers to get more clients or candidates through our consulting practice and online tools. So be sure to check out our sites like recruiting headlines, job fairing, and more to stay up to date on what's happening in recruiting. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon on the next episode of RecTech, the Recruiting Technology Podcast.